This is I Have No Title and I Must Podcast, the show where we discuss whatever aspect of pop culture is on our mind. For this episode, we kind of went back and forth as to what the topic should be. Do we stay in the realm of movies? Do we branch out? And if so, to what? And while talking, it came up that this year marks the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who. And turns out, both of us being the Doctor Who fans that we are, decided to independently of each other to rewatch the series in preparation for the anniversary event in November.
Yes, we did. So, what is Doctor Who? One of the longest running television series of all time. And that is one of the primary reasons why some people are a little afraid of it. They feel like they need to watch the entirety of it, which we're not watching the entirety of the entire series, just from the 2005 revival to present day, the Ninth Doctor to present day, which is what we want to encourage people to do. Our focus isn't going to be all of Doctor Who or even all of the modern series. It's why you should not skip the Ninth Doctor, Christopher Eccleston.
Yes, and it actually took us a while to kind of arrive on, how we're going to present this episode.
An hour and 29 minutes, I think.
Yes, because this is actually our second attempt at recording this episode. Because just like Doctor Who, the first attempt was all over time and space. And for anyone curious, anything that we can salvage from that will be put up on our Patreon as bonus content.
I think we should make them pay extra just to listen to the whole thing.
It's like, or pay extra to never see the light of day.
I don't know what you're talking about. It wasn't that bad. I mean, I would be defending myself if I'm just saying it was all over the place. Having said that, I think that was a fair representation of the show itself.
Yes, just maybe not a good first introduction for those unfamiliar.
So who is the Doctor?
That's the question. Well, the Doctor is a Time Lord from Gallifrey, and he travels in a time machine called the TARDIS that most often looks like a police box from the 1950s. And he usually travels with some kind of companion for Earth, but that is kind of like our representation, like, of us with the Doctor.
The modern shows, it's almost always been human, 99% of the time, and almost always someone from a modern era, which is actually kind of a complaint that some people have had. They have said they should maybe branch out. In the old days, that was mostly what it was, but very occasionally there were aliens that traveled with them, or even robots and various other types of characters. So it's generally going to be a younger woman, and that's it. Although in the old days, and sometimes in the modern era, there's a fairly large entourage of companions, which I think even most recently, it was a larger group.
And the unique thing about the Doctor is he pretty much goes around solving problems, with as little violence as possible. Sometimes that line is crossed with the Doctor. But he, instead of a weapon, he uses his trusty sonic screwdriver, which is, he calls a screwdriver, but it's more like a Swiss Army knife and does whatever he needs it to do. Doesn't
kill, doesn't wound, doesn't maim, but it is very good at opening doors.
Yes.
So why did you start watching the show?
Well, it's one of those things that I had no idea what Doctor Who was, hadn't heard of it in any capacity, though I don't know how I hadn't, because it shows up in The Simpsons, It shows up in Family Guy, American Dad, and a bunch of other things make references to it, even before the revival. But I just happened to be walking around the store one day with one of my friends, and he noticed a collector's set that had action figures of all the Doctors up to the 11th Doctor, which was where we were at this point in time. And he got real excited, and he was telling me about it because I had never heard of it. But the box looked like the TARDIS, had all the Doctors in it, and like when he opened it up, had a little bit of information about each one.
The Velcro
flaps.
flaps.
And so he was telling me about, what it is and all this stuff. And I'm like, hey, that sounds pretty cool. And then I just happened to be on Netflix a few days later, and they had all the episodes up through the 10th Doctor. And I started watching, and I've been hooked ever since.
It's strange how it never really broke through in America. It was relegated to PBS and remained kind of a mystery to a lot of people, except for like certain hardcore science fiction fans that had heard of it. I had heard of it and had seen articles about it. I remember before 2005, before it returned, I saw an article in Wizard magazine, and I saw that the same lineup you did of all the Doctors up through Paul McGann, the 8th Doctor, and I thought, this. I am not getting into one. I've got too much Star Wars and Star Trek in my head. Deep Space Nine alone takes up too much space. My brain needs to be a little bit bigger just because of that show. So I ignored it. I said, this is ridiculous. There's too much going on here. How would you even begin with something like this that goes back that far? I'm a little OCD when it comes to these things. If I'm gonna watch a show, I have to watch the entirety of it. If I see a few bits and pieces from something, I think like, oh, Frasier's pretty good. I don't just want to watch a best of or a marathon or whatever. I want to see it from beginning to end. I want to take my time with it. I want to have fun with it and gobble the whole thing up over time and, take the good with the bad and say, I watched that in its entirety and I can judge the whole thing. So I threw that away pretty quick. Eventually, one day I was getting ready for an event that night, and so I was going to be stuck at home most of the day. On Sci-Fi Channel, they were playing a marathon of a science fiction show, the Sci-Fi Channel. I don't know what they're doing these days, but back then they would play a wide variety of things. I think for a while they had Next Generation on there, and they would play bad made-for-TV movies all the time. I think they even played the old Captain America movie at one point. So it was the episode Tooth and Claw, which we're not up to. We're not doing that today. Don't get too excited. We're not up to the 10th Doctor. But it was the 10th Doctor, but I didn't know it was Doctor Who. I didn't know it was the 10th Doctor. I didn't know who David Tennant was. And I got more and more into this show, and I thought it was just a weird British made-for-TV werewolf movie. Turns out it wasn't. It was Doctor Who. I eventually found that out. And they were playing a marathon. I was in and out all day. Eventually, by the time it got to the end of that season, I was hooked, but I didn't move forward with it. I found out we had the DVDs over at our local Hastings, so I started from episode 1 or episode 697, and I ate it up from there. I went on and I loved it. If I could go back now and say like, oh, just skip 9 and go get right on to 10, the 9th Doctor primes you for the 10th Doctor. And it's an overarching story. There's a bigger story to be told if you're in it for the story. Christopher Eccleston's an excellent actor. He brings a lot of drama. He wanted to get into the show because of Russell T Davies' writing, the showrunner, and because people had told him he wasn't funny and he wasn't charming. And he saw that as an opportunity to prove them wrong. And prove them wrong he did.
Yeah, and I think that's a good lead-in to where we want to go. Is, like we said, this has been going since 63. So there's a lot to take in. It's like, where do you start if you haven't already? And I think most people are in agreement that, don't start with the older episodes. 1, they're harder to find. 2, they're very much a product of their time. Not saying that you should skip them, like definitely go watch them. But a lot of people try to think where to start. Some say, go ahead and skip the 9th, go into the 10th. And some crazy people say skip the 9th and 10th and go to the 11th.
What?
Yeah. I kind of see their point, because from a narrative standpoint, like that's like a fresh start. But I disagree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You won me back.
Yeah. And though he is not my favorite Doctor, nor is this my favorite episode, definitely start with Christopher Eccleston and the first episode he's in, Rose.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think that pretty much tells you everything you need to know about who the Doctor is and what he does and what you're in for going forward.
When Russell was trying to convince the BBC to bring the show back, it had been off the air for almost 20. It went off the air in 1989 after 26 seasons, 26 years. Then they brought it back for one night only in 1996, bringing that total up to 156 stories. That's 696 episodes. That can seem kind of daunting. That can seem intimidating. Just like if someone were to get into Star Trek now, like you're 16, you're a nerd, you're in for the night, and you're finally going to tackle this whole Star Trek thing, and you're like, oh my god, there's too much. And what do I start with? Episode 1, Star Trek, 1966. You got to start somewhere. You don't have to start there with Doctor Who. Don't think that you have to start with 1963, November 23rd. Russell specifically said in his mission statement, there's a lot of expository history to Doctor Who, and we're just going to ignore it to a degree. They're still going to honor it and represent it here, but you don't have to know that. They're going to represent it in a way that you don't have to know everything that came before it. You can jump on at Rose and move forward, and it can be presented to a whole new generation of kids and families that didn't watch Doctor Who back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And this can be a fresh start, a new jumping on point, and go forward from here.
Yeah, that's definitely where I started, and that's definitely where I recommend to start if you have not already. But one of the great things about Doctor Who, much like Star Wars, there's a lot of supplementary material if you do get into it and you want to go further. There's plenty of novellas, comic books, plenty of the classic series, a lot to get into. Maybe skip the video games.
There's the audio dramas as well that the actors have come back to reprise their roles. I think every former actor who's portrayed the Doctor and many of the companions, maybe not every single former companion, but many of the main companions have returned to reprise their voices for these, giving them an air of authenticity, and especially because the writers have returned, they get into some weirder material with those. They have a little bit more freedom to dip into some hard sci-fi areas and just weirder topics, but it can feel authentic. Now, as to whether or not they're canon, that's up for debate.
Yeah, but when you can go anywhere in time and space, very easily could be canon.
They could be. There's well, we'll get into spoilers. What was your favorite episode in the first season, the Ninth Doctor's run?
I would think it had to be, is it Empty Children?
The Empty Child, the two-parter?
Yeah.
The Doctor dances and the Empty Child.
Because there's a lot going on with that I think is representative of the Doctor moving forward. You're introduced to some fan favorite characters with Captain Jack Harkness. Mm-hmm. You get a little bit of that horror.
Oh, for sure.
You get a little bit of that sci-fi. And then you get to see the Doctor work through the problems and try and save everybody and not letting anyone else go.
That could have easily been a classic Who story. It feels timeless. It's set in the Second World War. It's nighttime through the entirety of the two-parter episode. The Doctor somehow finds a way to deliver that infamous line, just this once, everybody lives, which the reason that is so dramatic and such a dichotomy to the rest of the series is the on-screen death count gets pretty high. Especially in the modern series, maybe not as much as the old series. It still stays relatively high for the modern series too. You know, it's hard to... I really like the finale of it. One thing I would mention, and this is for people who have seen the series, or if you get into it, write us and tell us if you want to start watching it. Especially,
oh yeah, for sure. Like if you're already a fan of the series, write in the comments, tell us your experience with Doctor Who, and if you're not a fan and you decide to start watching, let us know how we were the ones that started that for you.
The worst thing, I think, in at least that first season is Plastic Mickey, and it's in that first episode. They get it out of the way fast. That's just to tell you, when you come to that, there's a decapitation. And this is a children's show. Do not forget, this is for children. Watch it with your kids, everybody. I think, but what I was going to say, this is mainly for the people who have seen it. If you make it halfway in, there's an episode called Father's Day. It's got one of my favorite monsters in it. I saw a list recently on YouTube that said it was one of the worst monsters. Go figure. Everybody's going to have a...
Yeah, I disagree. Honestly, I wish they would revisit that concept, because what these monsters are pretty much like the keepers of the time. And if there's any kind of anomalies within the timeline that shouldn't be, they show up to correct it. And they only ever appear in that one episode outside of the comics. And I think that they should really revisit that.
Yeah, imagine if you've seen Loki, the Loki series, the TVA, how they go in and fix timelines. Imagine if the TVA were just these animals, like a naturally occurring thing that just comes in and eats up a timeline to correct it. That's what it was. And it feels bleak, it feels scary, it's pretty dark, and it's kind of a bottle episode too, if you like that sort of thing. And somebody has to make a major sacrifice. I feel that should have been a 2-part episode. I feel like they could have developed a lot more story out of it. Again, I think that's a lot of people's... I didn't have fond memories of it. I mean, it was a good episode, but it wasn't one of those that when I think about if I'm going to go watch one episode of Doctor Who, or like, you know, I'll put something on in the background, it definitely wouldn't be that one. But upon rewatching it just in the past few weeks, I really enjoyed it, and I really thought, you know, this could have been a bigger story, especially with the monster of the week thing that's in there. They're not sentient, they don't speak, they just kind of screech. Kind of these, how do we describe them? Like a dragon-y...
Like a dragon bat with a sickle tail?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, it's, like, their shape is kind of weird. They have these wings, these giant kind of bat wings, and their skin looks like a dragon, and their head looks kind of reminds me of the Brood from the X-Men a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But that might have been some inspiration there. But they, you know, the Doctor defeats them, and without killing them. He just kind of sends them away. Spoilers for that episode. Watch it. Watch the whole series from the Ninth Doctor. I'm going to keep repeating this. Also, like, share, and subscribe. We appreciate all of you, every single one of you, especially you, Sam. I know you're listening. Hey, Sam, get back to work. So Rose is our introductory to this revival of Doctor Who. Is she your favorite companion of the modern series?
Yeah, I would say she is. And I'm not alone in that. I think if by polls that have been done, Rose is only second to Sarah Jane from the original run of Doctor Who reprises her role as like some cameos and then comes back for her own spin-off TV. But those are other episodes.
Yes, that's for our... Once we get past this later on in the year, we'll probably do... It'll be easy to just do it. The series as a whole, or narrowing it down to certain... Subcategories. I think Rose is a great introductory companion for the Doctor. It's generally in the classic series. It wasn't... Doctor Who is not Twilight. There's no romantic subplot with the Doctor and the companion. Only once. Did you ever, like, kind of get the impression of that? And it was a companion send-off in the Third Doctor's era. She kind of has a thing for a newly introduced character, and she's going to stop traveling with the Doctor. And the Doctor keeps kind of getting in the way during, like, of her kind of getting with this guy. And in the end, she tells him she's going to be staying because she's, you know, fallen for this guy, and he wishes her well. Takes a drink, and actually in that episode he was stranded on Earth, so he drives back to the army base where he was working at UNIT. It was a nice send-off for that character. It was a poignant moment, and you almost get the feeling like the Doctor did have feelings for this character that might have been something other than platonic, but it was never really there prior to that, and it's not something that Doctor Who does until this modern era, at least.
But it's also more than that. There's that will they, won't they, but it's also one of those things, there's true character growth even with the companions. Because Rose goes from this girl, she's just working at a shop at the mall. The only thing she does is like, work or hang out with her boyfriend and just want to eat snacks, to someone who's very capable of handling herself in the most extreme situations and is able to work alongside the doctor.
Yeah, in the first episode, she has to save the doctor by the end of the episode, proving herself very capable and a strong-willed character in herself. But through the series, through that first season at least, she really grows as a character and becomes something completely, no, I don't want to say completely different than what she was, but she definitely has an arc of her own. As do these supplementary characters. There are other characters that come and go. Her boyfriend Mickey is a returning cast member and eventually becomes a canonical companion to the Doctor. And technically her mom Jackie also does that. They go through arcs of their own. I think Mickey being one of the more dynamic characters. From that first run of this set of companions, I think Mickey's maybe my favorite. That might be a hot take. I don't know.
I don't know. I can definitely see that, though, because he goes from this scared kid that doesn't want to travel with the doctor because he doesn't feel that he can handle it to someone who becomes like a leader in his own right.
Yeah. Always deferring to the doctor because he has such respect for him. He doesn't let his ego get in the way. And I really love that they could have made him all the way through where Rose kind of leaves him, and continues to kind of in some ways kind of shun him. Like they become more just like more than friends, but less than in a relationship at some point. It kind of just fizzles. And he could have become really petty. They could have used that opportunity to like start his villain arc, but they didn't. They never did. And I think it was really respectful to the character. It made the character more gracious in a way and more heroic in other ways. And that's exactly what he becomes, is a hero in his own right. By the end of, staying away from spoilers, by the end of the arc, years to come, I thought that he and a few other characters might have their own spin-off. What that would be, I don't know. It didn't happen. Never say never, because now Disney has acquired Doctor Who. There are rumors of a lot of spin-offs on the table. I'm hoping for some of these characters to come back and the actors to reprise their roles.
Speaking of Disney, Chris.
Yes.
I know it's only episode 3, but I think we've definitely established a pattern. We've not mentioned Star Wars yet.
Have we not?
No.
I meant to, like, at the very beginning, middle, end, and at the epilogue.
So how are we going to do that?
I forgot.
Well, of course, Doctor Who, being as long-running as it is, shares a lot of actors with Star Wars.
It does indeed.
A few of the prominent ones. Simon Pegg plays a villain in the 9th Doctor's run, and also plays Unkar Plutt, the junk dealer on Jakku in Force Awakens. And what if I told you that Darth Vader himself was in Doctor Who?
Was he?
Yeah.
Is it David Prowse?
Yep. David Prowse played a Minotaur in one of the episodes from the 70s.
I remember that.
And what if I also told you that the Doctor himself was in Star Wars?
Is it Matt Smith?
No, David Tennant.
Oh, yeah, I don't know how
Yeah, David
I'm
Tennant.
super excited for this, too.
David Tennant does a voice in the Clone Wars animated series.
Yes. And coming up in Ahsoka, live action animation CGI, but David Tennant's coming back for that.
Nice. I missed that in the trailer, but I am super excited about that.
I saw him in the trailer, and as if I couldn't recognize David Tennant's voice, I went to confirm it just in case they got somebody that good. It is David Tennant. He is coming back as the robot that helps younglings build their first lightsaber. I can't remember his name.
Hu Yang, I think. I'm probably saying it wrong. And if no one's figured it out yet, we said the 9th Doctor wasn't our favorite. David Tennant.
Yeah, clearly. Yeah, you'll see photos. Not to say that I dislike Christopher Eccleston. This whole episode was designed to convince you not to skip, because there's so many. We were watching other jumping on point suggestion YouTube videos telling you, where can you jump on to watch Doctor Who? Not one of them said the 9th Doctor or recommended Christopher Eccleston. We completely, wholeheartedly disagree with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's gotta be, if you're gonna watch the show, don't look up a list. Don't look up what are the fan favorite episodes. Don't look up the best written episode. Just start with episode 1, Christopher Eccleston, Rose. Get an introduction to it's gonna be weird. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be campy sometimes. It's gonna be British humory. It's gonna get darker. I promise you that. If you're looking for any of these things.
Yeah, and honestly, like if you watch the previews for what episode's next at the end of whatever episode you're on, and it looks like it's going to be boring, trust me, those usually tend to be the best episodes.
You know what? I'm going to go ahead and say, whenever the final sting hits and the music starts playing, and it is going to start playing the trailer for the next episode, I always hit pause, or I skip to the actual credits. I don't watch them. I don't even want to see the trailer for the next episode if I'm just about to watch it. Plus, I already know what happens. I don't recommend watching them. If you're going to watch the show, watch it with 0 spoilers. Go in completely fresh. Now, I'm not saying don't ever watch a trailer for something or don't watch a season trailer, but I mean, this is a show it's only been back since 2005. If it's all on right now, HBO, is that right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be going to Disney. I assume they're going to acquire all the rights.
Now, from the 9th Doctor to, I think, almost all of the 13th Doctor is on HBO. But starting sometime this year, Disney has acquired the international distribution rights for Doctor Who. And so all the new episodes you'll be able to see on Disney+.
Yeah, so it's weird they're paying for it now. Because they've literally told Russell to add more action and stuff to the scripts and say make it more expensive. Let's make it bigger. But they're not on there yet. They just got Spider-Man on Disney, so they've worked out some sort of deal with Sony. I don't know if HBO will be keeping some stuff, and that begs the question: will they also get Torchwood and Sarah Jane? Will it be all of it, or because those are connected?
It's a good question and a possibility. But Torchwood is also already a little...
It's like hard R.
Well, I mean, that and the BBC had the first 2 seasons. Then I think Starz had the second 2 seasons.
Yep.
So I'm actually surprised HBO has all 4 seasons. And if anyone else is curious about where to find older episodes, try checking your local library. I know ours has several. And also if you're wanting to check out the supplementary, our library also has several of the comic books. So yeah, definitely check it out. What do you think? You want to end the show there?
I think we could.
So we just want to say thank you for staying with us till the end. If you like what we do, give us a like and subscribe. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and consider supporting us on Patreon, where we offer bonus episodes and other bonus content. And until next time, farewell.